A brutal and tragic murder mystery is unfolding in California, and many people haven't heard about it just by virtue of all of the crazy things that are going on in the world. And hi, welcome to another episode of At Least You Heard It Here. I'm your host, Alyse Adamson, and today I want to shed light on a story coming out of California, and that is the murder of a 15-year-old girl named Celeste Rivas, whose body was found in the trunk of a Tesla on September 8th. Now, all murders are tragic, but why has this murder gained national attention? Well, that's because that Tesla that Celeste Rivas was found in was registered to a well-known artist named David. And David spelled with the number 4 instead of an A because he is a Gen Z artist extraordinaire. And before this story, I had never heard of David. I guess I'm just not in his demographic. But apparently, he is a very well-received and profitable artist who came up on SoundCloud, on the online forums, and then made his breakthrough on TikTok. He is so big that he was embarking on a world tour at the time of this discovery. So before I talk more about this story, I just want to make clear that David has not been named a suspect in this case. Nobody has been named a suspect in this case. There have been no arrests, and I'm just sharing with you the facts. And the facts is that on September 8th, a body, which was later identified as Celeste Rivas, was found in the trunk of a Tesla that is registered to singer David. That is a fact. So it's important to understand the timeline of this tragedy. So Celeste Rivas, again, 14 years old at the time of her disappearance. We're going to talk about that. The reporting is that she's a 15-year-old girl because her birthday has passed since she was last seen, but she was 14 at the time that she went missing in April of 2024. And from the reporting, it is clear that Celeste Rivas had run away from home more than once. So we don't know what was going on in her life, but we do know that clearly she was having some trouble because she had left the home and she had been returned. What we also know from some reporting, but not necessarily corroborated, so this is all alleged, that she had a boyfriend named David at the time. But we do know that she was traveling in circles with adults. So Celeste Rivas goes missing in April of 2024. So at the time her body is discovered, she's been gone for over a year. So in August of 2025, it's just a few months ago, a Tesla on a California block started receiving tickets, right? Parking tickets for being parked in places it shouldn't be parked in. Now, according to some reports, this Tesla had been seen moved from one side of the street to the other. I think that's a little unclear, but I think what is clear is that in August, it started to gain the attention of the local authorities. So it's ticketed a bunch. The tickets continue to accrue on the car. It's clear. It's kind of been abandoned probably. So it's towed to a tow yard. After it's towed to a tow yard, there is an overwhelming stench. And let me just tell you that the stench of death is like none other. And so the people in the tow yard knew something was terribly wrong. They call the police respond, and they search this car on September 8th. And this is a trigger warning because this is grisly and graphic. And what they find is the dismembered body of a young woman at the time. That's what they thought, a young woman in this trunk. And it is clear by the state of the body that it has been there for some period of time. Now, right now, the public narrative is that it was in there for at least a couple of weeks. We don't know that for sure. The medical examiner has not said that for sure. But what we do know is that the body was identified as Celeste Rivas, and she's been missing for over a year. They find this body September 8th. On September 17th, I believe, police execute a search warrant on a house that's only a couple of blocks away from where this car is found. And this house it's a rental, and it's being rented by somebody named John Marshall. And what's important to note is that John Marshall is singer David's manager. And John Marshall was not occupying this house. David was. And just so y'all know, this house was going for about $20,000 a month, just to give you an idea of how successful David was at this time. Again, for an artist I've never heard of, he is raking in the cash. I guess, online platforms are the new profitable forum, but I digress. So, investigative journalists have looked into this, and there are photographs of the exterior and the interior of the home on rental sites, and those have been matched with photos that David himself have taken, both, inside the property. So we know he was staying there. And we know that the police searched it, and they left with a lot of evidence, boxes of evidence, some of which look to be electronic evidence. So the police at this stage are at least investigating the connection between what's happened and a place David was staying, which makes sense because the car that Celeste Rivas was found in was registered to David. Now, again, I have to keep saying multiple times, David has not been accused of a crime at all. But as a former prosecutor who, worked hand in hand or side by side with law enforcement, this is how investigations unfold. If you find the body of somebody in the trunk of a car that belongs to somebody, you're going to start asking questions like, who is this person? How could this body have gotten in there? What do they know? Now, David released a statement very early on after this discovery that he's cooperating with authorities, whatever that means. But he was on tour at the time in the U.S. He was out touring and intended to continue touring until after the search warrant. And then all of his tour dates were canceled, which I think is a good idea because he's getting some very bad press right now. And let's be honest, the police are investigating things that are related to him. So it's probably a good idea that he sticks close. So they execute a search warrant September 17th, and still not public what they found, but you can bet that they're analyzing everything. Those electronics, they're going through them. They're probably, if it's a computer, they're going to go through, see chats, anything that has been left in files, things that we think we delete. A lot of times we don't. Who is he talking to? Did he have a relationship with Celeste? Remember, there's reporting that she was dating a man named David. Not completely verified, but those are the questions investigators are seeking to answer with the evidence that they've received. So on September 29th, there was the medical examiner report, a preliminary report has come out, and no cause of death has been determined yet. And also, it has not been publicly reported how long Celeste Rivas had been deceased in that car. These things are hard to determine. But what is unanswered for me right now, a gap, is how long she was truly missing. We know she left home in April of 2024, but is there any trail, any proof that she was alive after that spring of 2024? Again, she was a teenage girl, and we know she had an online presence. We know that. Did everything cease in the spring of 2024? Did she stop making cell phone calls? Have any of her friends heard from her since that time period? These are the questions I guarantee you that investigators are asking right now and having answered, because whether or not she was seen or heard from between April and September is critically important, right? Another critically important question is, where was the Tesla before August of 2025? That is when it started to accumulate tickets, but has it been sitting there for a year and a half? Do we have evidence David drove it in the intervening months? I mean, we could sit here and speculate all day. I mean, there's a possibility that her body wasn't in the car the entire time, that perhaps she was deceased for a long period of time, but the body was more recently placed in the car. There are lots of cases where a murder victim is moved for whatever reason. Sometimes they're even put in a refrigeration unit, and that can slow down what looks like the time of death because they were preserved for a long period of time. And then once they're removed and put elsewhere, then the decomposition process happens, and it's hard to determine the exact time of death. So there's so many questions about how and why this went undetected for so long. We know they were looking for this young girl, and that's why I have questions about whether or not she was really alive during that year she was missing, knowing that her family and so many other people were looking for her. There's also questions about why she was with these adults. She was only 14 at the time she went missing. If she really did have a relationship with David, we don't know. This is alleged, unsubstantiated. But if she did, I mean, that's unlawful. She's a minor. What was going on? Who was aware of all of this? And was there an adult available to intervene to prevent this type of stuff from happening? Okay? So that's what we know right now. We know that David's managers also issued a statement, and he acknowledged renting the house, but he's not saying much. I think the hard overlay of all of this, the atmospherics that I think are also important, is to understand who David is as an artist. He's into some pretty dark stuff. So before Celeste Rivas went missing, David released a song, one of his more popular hits, and it was entitled Homicidal Romance. It's disturbing. It's disturbing. It's disturbing even setting aside the facts of this case and the fact that a body was found in his car. But those lyrics are just disturbing in general. And again, maybe this is just me as a former prosecutor who stood in the shoes of victims and worked with victims, but I don't understand how any of that is entertaining. I mean, yes, it's artistry. Yes, it is freedom of expression. I'm not saying it needs to be censored. I'm just saying, to me, it's sick. It's absolutely sick that it raked up all of these streams, and now because of this case, it's getting even more popular. Here's another thing about David. Apparently, as he tours on stage, he performs with a casket on stage. And there's also some sort of guest book for his fans to sign like it's some kind of funeral. I mean, he is a dark artist. There's also a clip that is making its way around social media where he purports to say that he has some kind of murderous alter ego. Now, again, I've not independently verified that clip. And now with AI, it is like impossible to be able to tell what is true and not true without additional sourcing. So I will just leave it there and say that clip exists. But Homicidal Romance, I mean, that is a song attributed to him. He wrote it. There's a music video. Music video is just as disturbing. So I think we're right to question. I mean, again, he's not been accused of a crime, but I'm just here piecing together the dots. And you have a young lady who continued to run away, who we know had a connection to this gentleman. We know her body was found in a car registered to him. We know a house he was staying in was mere blocks away from where this car with the body was found. And we know that he's writing music with the title Homicidal Romance. And he's a dark artist. It's just, no matter what, it's a bad look. I mean, there's a lot of explanations that could fit this situation. This is not an accusation, but it's a bad look. It's a really, really bad look. And I think the most important part of the story that we cannot lose sight of is the victim, that a child was murdered. A child, for whatever reason, ended up lured away from home, from social media. And there, again, there were people who tried to help her. She was returned home numerous times after running away. But were there more people that could help her? Who was aware of this? This is the danger of social media. When we say kids don't belong on social media, we're not out of touch. We just understand how these things can end up. And it's tragic. 14 years old, 15 years old, a baby, a girl with her whole life ahead of her. And I want to keep this story alive. And there's so much going on in the news right now. And Celeste Rivas is just one victim of too many in the United States with similar circumstances. Again, her story is making national headlines because of who is in the orbit of this story, somebody famous. But victims like Celeste come from all over the US, social media, trafficking. I mean, we talk about the Epstein files all the time, but we talk about them because of all of the folks that were victimized. And we have to think about these young women and think about ways that we can protect these young women better to prevent more tragedies. So I will continue to follow this story. I'm going to dedicate another episode to Celeste and her story and this investigation. So if you want to continue to follow the story, go ahead and be sure to click like, subscribe, and remember to tell folks, at least you heard it here.